everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This video is going to cover the cycle of violence, and if you're new here, just a little disclaimer. My name's Amanda. I'm trained as a community services worker, and I'm also a victim survivor of domestic abuse. I'm not a counsellor, I'm not a therapist, I am not an expert by any means. I am just here to share all that I have learned on my journey through psychoeducational groups and therapies on my way out of an abusive marriage. So I want to share and help anyone else who might be in the same situation. So the cycle of violence has 3 phases, basically the honeymoon phase or the buyback phase, the build-up phase, and then the explosion. In the honeymoon phase, this is where a relationship starts, and generally an abusive one is no different. It starts with the abuser putting their best foot forward and wanting to know everything about you. Generally, in an abusive relationship, they will then use the information that they mined out of you in this time against you down the track. But you don't know that at this point. So they're showering you with affection. They also like to fast track a relationship because, let's face it, there's only so long you can keep pretending to be someone you're not. So once the abuser has the victim hooked or in a relationship, they begin a subtle shift and the level of tension increases. So harassment and arguments become more prevalent, and the abuser may become passive aggressive, or basically an overall unease comes over the victim. She can't do anything right, she can't say anything right, and this is the build-up phase where the levels of control and the threats increase, and the victim feels anxious and fearful and is actively trying to diffuse any situation that arises, but to no avail, because the explosion phase is inevitable, which is the incident of extreme violence, whether it be physical or emotional or verbal or sexual. These tactics are used to instill more fear and to gain more control, which is the overall goal. Fear and control, power and control. After this event, the abuser may move through a remorse phase leading into the honeymoon phase. So they attempt to justify the abuse and minimize the event, maybe blaming the victim. They could display guilt and they're promising that it won't happen again. They could be blaming other factors like work and stress and substance abuse. They may threaten suicide, and they get sulky if the victim talks about leaving. So they're basically using emotional blackmail or emotional abuse then to reel the victim back in. And once the victim agrees to stay, then they move back into the honeymoon phase. They're in the buyback phase. They're spending time with the family. They're buying gifts. They're doing all they can to make the victim feel like they have the relationship that they started with back. So yeah, they're doing everything they can. They're spending time with them. They're being sweet, and around it goes again. And the length of time between each repetition varies. I mean, every relationship's different. However, it often gets more frequent and also escalates over time. I found in my personal experience that it ramped up after any significant event that bound me further to him. So once I moved in, once we purchased a car together, when we got married, when we had a child, each and every relationship milestone seemed to make him feel he was more entitled to treat me however he wanted, because he thought I wasn't going anywhere. He thought I was bound into this relationship, and I had so much invested in this relationship that I wouldn't leave. That's basically how the cycle of violence works. And unfortunately, each and every one of these cycles leads to a trauma bond. That's why victims have such a hard time once they've left disentangling their feelings from their abusers. Now, we're always talking about the abuser within the cycle of violence. The abuser does this and the abuser does that, and then the abuser apologizes and feels remorse and their behavior. But we don't really look at how the victim feels. And once you go through, it's just exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. Each and every phase, it's debilitating in the end. So we'll run through just how a victim feels. So within the tension building phase, they may think that they deserve it. They're trying to please. They're depressed. They're feeling angry and hopeless, embarrassed, afraid, humiliated. They're trying to reason with the abuser. They're walking on eggshells. They're doing everything they can to nurture and soothe and calm the person down. They're trying to keep children quiet and out of the way. They're worried. They're paralyzed. They're not able to do anything because nothing's going to be right. They turn to drugs and alcohol to self-medicate. And then when the explosion happens, they're feeling afraid. They're feeling trapped, helpless, or numb. I mean, if you've ever been in that fight, flight, freeze, that freeze moment where you're not quite there, it's a horrible feeling, and you've got no control. You've got no outside control. You've got no control within yourself. So it's just all happening around you, and you're there. They're trying to protect themselves. They're trying to protect their children, potentially. They're either submitting helplessly or they're trying to fight back. They're trying to leave. They may have the police called. They may have called the police or neighbours. So they're dealing with that, and they're also trying to reason with the abuser still. And then once the remorse kicks in and they're heading back to the honeymoon phase, then the victim's suspicious and scared and hopeful and relieved and feeling responsible and agreeing to stay and agreeing to stop legal proceedings and feeling sympathetic and feeling exhausted and frustrated, but trying to set boundaries because the abuser's in a place where he's listening or agreeing to get help and set up counselling. So the victim's believing everything that the abuser's saying is true, and they're trying to set boundaries so that this doesn't happen again. In the back of their mind, they're still scared and suspicious and worried that they're making a huge mistake by not just leaving right now. And it goes around and around and around, and you don't know what the next day is going to bring. And so it's difficult to explain in a sentence why victims don't just leave. But once you've been around that hamster wheel a couple of times, you're exhausted, and trying to keep your brain in the right gear to get out the door it's hard work. That, my friends, is the cycle of violence. So short and not so sweet this week. Thank you so much for being here. If you're enjoying my videos, please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. Certainly helps me out. I will put all of my Facebook and Instagram information in the description box along with my email address. Please, if this video has brought up anything and you're concerned about anything within your relationship and you need help, please reach out. If you need help finding resources in your local area, please email me or join my Facebook group, and someone hopefully will be nearby and be able to find the right place for you. But I will do my very, very best to get you in touch with the right people to help you out in your local area. So with all that being said, until next time, please look after yourselves and be kind to one another. Bye.